Welcome back to J&M Bedtime Stories. Tonight, we cover 50 more true crime cases from every state in the United States. This is part 1. If you enjoy this content, please consider subscribing and turn on the notifications so you'll know every time we upload a new video. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Alabama. Tina Watson was a 26-year-old American woman from Helena, Alabama. She had recently married Gabe Watson, a fellow Alabamian and certified rescue diver. The two had met at a local church and shared a love of travel. In October 2003, Tina and Gabe traveled to Australia for their honeymoon. Part of their itinerary included a scuba diving trip on the Great Barrier Reef with a company called Mike Ball Dive Expeditions. On October 22nd, they went diving at the site of the SS Yongala, a popular wreck dive known for its strong currents and vibrant marine life. Despite the potential hazards, Tina had limited scuba experience, and this was her first open water dive outside of her training. Gabe, while certified, was not considered an expert. According to Gabe Watson, shortly after descending, Tina had trouble equalizing her ears and panicked. He said she knocked off his mask and regulator, so he had to surface to get help. When returned, she was already being pulled up by other divers, unconscious. Tina was brought to the surface but could not be revived. Her body sank briefly but was later recovered. Tina's death was initially ruled an accident, but questions quickly emerged. Several dive instructors and witnesses stated Gabe wasn't acting like someone in a panic, nor did he signal for help promptly. The dive computer showed a suspiciously short dive. Photos taken shortly before the dive showed Tina looking cheerful and excited. An autopsy found no clear cause of death, but drowning was the presumed cause. Most notably, Gabe had asked about the dive site's currents and emergency exits in detail beforehand, and back in the US, he had encouraged Tina to change her life insurance policies to make him the sole beneficiary. After years of pressure from Tina's family and the Australian authorities, Gabe was charged with manslaughter in Queensland. In 2009, he pled guilty to a lesser charge of negligent manslaughter and served 18 months of a 4.5-year sentence before being deported to the United States. Back in Alabama, Gabe was indicted for capital murder based on accusations that he had planned the murder in the U.S. before carrying it out abroad. However, in 2012, the judge dismissed the charges due to insufficient evidence, stating the case was based more on suspicion than proof. Many theories persist. Here are a few. Tina had a life insurance policy, and some believe Gabe stood to benefit. Others think it was a tragic accident exacerbated by Gabe's poor decision-making and Tina's inexperience. Though unlikely, some have speculated about unknown medical conditions or other factors. Gabe has since remarried. Tina's family continues to advocate for justice and greater scuba safety awareness. Alaska. The Investor was a 58-foot fishing vessel skippered by 28-year-old Mark Coulthurst of Blaine, Washington. In early September 1982, the Investor docked in the small fishing village of Craig, Alaska, on Prince of Wales Island at the end of a salmon season. The town was full of other fishermen wrapping up their work. On September 6, 1982, witnesses saw Mark Coulthurst talking with an unidentified man at the dock. Later, around 6 a.m. the next morning, people noticed the investor was missing. At about 4 p.m. on September 7th, the investor was found ablaze and adrift near Fish Egg Island, a few miles away. The fire was intense and only partially extinguished by a rainstorm. When authorities boarded the burned vessel, they found the charred remains of 7 bodies, some so badly burned that dental records had to be used for identification. The 8th body was never found but presumed to have been consumed by the fire. Local police, the Alaska State Troopers, and the FBI were all involved in the investigation. Witnesses in Craig had seen a man, described as in his early 20s with acne and dark hair, piloting the investor's skiff back and forth from the burning boat. He was acting nervously, avoiding eye contact, and had blood on his clothes. Eventually, the investigation led to a suspect, John Kenneth Peel, a 24-year-old former deckhand who had worked briefly for Coulthurst the previous year. Peel was from Bellingham, Washington, and matched the description given by witnesses. However, there was no physical evidence, only circumstantial, including a possible motive involving a falling out with Coulthurst. Peel was arrested in 1984. His trial, held in 1986, ended in a hung jury. He was tried again in 1988, and after a long, expensive trial, Peel was acquitted of all charges. He maintained his innocence throughout and later sued for wrongful prosecution, eventually settling with the state for $900,000. The investor murders remain officially unsolved. Despite the trials and decades of investigation, no one has been convicted. It's often called one of the worst mass murders in Alaskan history and continues to be the subjects of books, podcasts, and speculation. Arizona. On August 10, 1991, a tragic event unfolded at a Buddhist temple in Waddell, Arizona, resulting in the deaths of 9 individuals. The victims included 6 monks, along with a nun, her nephew, a novice monk, and a temple employee. They were discovered the following morning arranged face down in a circle, each shot execution style in the back of the head. The investigation began with a tip from Mike McGraw, a patient at a Tucson mental hospital, who named 4 men from Tucson as the perpetrators. These individuals were arrested, and after extensive interrogations lasting up to 20 hours, each provided confessions. However, these confessions were later recanted, and no physical evidence linked the suspects to the crime. This led to the charges being dropped, and the case remained unsolved for several months. In October 1991, during a search unrelated to the temple murders, a .22 caliber rifle was found in a friend's vehicle, leading authorities to Jonathan Duty, Alessandro Alex Garcia, both teenagers from Tucson. Further investigation revealed that the rifle matched the type used in the temple killings. Both teens were arrested, and after prolonged interrogations, confessed to the murders. They claimed to have targeted the temple to steal money, electronics, and jewelry. The confessions obtained from Duty and Garcia were contentious. Critics argued that the lengthy interrogations, which included isolation and intense pressure, led to coerced confessions. The American Civil Liberties Union of Arizona condemned the tactics used, stating that the methods employed were improper and could lead to false confessions. Subsequent legal proceedings highlighted these concerns, with appeals courts later ruling that the confessions were inadmissible due to their coercive nature. Despite the issues surrounding the confessions, Duty and Garcia were convicted. Duty, who was 17 at the time of the murders, received a sentence of 249 years in prison. Garcia, 16 at the time, was also convicted and sentenced accordingly. However, in 2011, an appeals court ruled that Duty's confession had been coerced, leading to a retrial. The retrial ended in a hung jury in 2013, and Duty remained in prison. The Buddhist Temple Massacre remains one of the most harrowing events in Arizona history, prompting discussions about interrogation practices, the reliability of confessions, and the potential for miscarriages of justice. The case serves as a poignant reminder of the complexities involved in criminal investigations and the importance of safeguarding the rights of the accused. Arkansas. The deaths of Don Henry and Kevin Ives, often referred to as the Boys on the Tracks, is one of the most infamous and mysterious cases in Arkansas history, marked by controversy, conflicting official accounts, and widespread speculation about possible cover-up involving drugs and corruption. Don Henry, 16, and Kevin Ives, 17, were two teenage boys from Alexander, Arkansas, a small town near Little Rock. On the night of August 22, 1987, they reportedly went out hunting, as they often did, and never returned home. Early morning on August 23, 1987, a train crew saw the boys' bodies laying across the tracks near Bryant, Arkansas. The conductor blew the horn and attempted to stop, but the train could not halt in time and ran over them. The boys were lying side by side, partially covered by a tarp, with their rifles beside them. Initial reports concluded they were in a deep sleep induced by marijuana. State medical examiner Dr. Fahmy Malak ruled the deaths as an accident, claiming they had smoked a large amount of marijuana and passed out on the tracks. This ruling was heavily criticized as toxicology reports showed the levels of marijuana were not enough to cause unconsciousness. The families fought to reopen the case. A second autopsy performed by Dr. Joseph Burton revealed that Kevin Ives died from a crushed skull and Don Henry had been stabbed in the back before their bodies were placed on the tracks. The case was reclassified as a homicide. Several theories emerged, including some people believed that the boys may have witnessed a drug drop or operation involving local law enforcement or officials and were killed to silence them. The case has been tied by conspiracy theorists to CIA drug trafficking through Mena, Arkansas, a known hotspot during the 1980s. Due to the case occurring during Bill Clinton's time as governor of Arkansas, and connections to controversial coroner Fahmy Malak, political motives and cover-up accusations have persisted. Multiple witnesses have died under suspicious circumstances over the years. Despite several grand jury investigations and ongoing public interest, no one has ever been officially charged with their murders, and the case remains unsolved. California. In the summer of 1969, a series of gruesome murders shocked America, and the nation would soon learn the name Charles Manson, a failed musician, self-proclaimed prophet, and cult leader. But behind Manson stood a group even more chilling, the Manson family. Charles Manson was born in 1934, raised in a turbulent household, and in and out of institutions for most of his youth. By the time he was released from prison in 1967, the summer of love was in full swing, and Manson, he had a plan. He saw the rise of hippie counterculture, free love, psychedelic drugs, and anti-establishment ideals, and used it to craft a following. He presented himself as a guru, a Messiah, and even the second coming of Christ. Manson attracted young, vulnerable people, mostly women, many of whom were looking for meaning in a chaotic world. They called themselves the Family. They lived communally, first in San Francisco, then at Spawn Ranch, a rundown film set outside of Los Angeles. They dropped acid, preached love, and listened to Manson's twisted philosophy, one that blended Beatles lyrics, Bible verses, and apocalyptic visions. Manson believed a race war was coming, a prophecy he called Helter Skelter. Manson longed to be a rock star. Through a chance connection, he met a music producer, Terry Melcher, Doris Day's son. But when Melcher rejected him, something inside Manson broke. Fueled by rejection and his delusions of grandeur, Manson gave the order. It was time to spark Helter Skelter. August 8, 1969, Manson sent 4 of his followers, Tex Watson, Susan Atkins, Patricia Crenwell, and Linda Kasabian, to CeeLo Drive. Their instructions: kill everyone inside. Inside was the actress Sharon Tate, 8 months pregnant, along with 4 others. The murders were brutal, ritualistic, and seemingly senseless. The next night, Manson led another group. This time, Leno and Rosemary LaBianca were slaughtered in their home. Words were written in blood on the walls. The Manson family was arrested months later, not for murder, but for car theft. It wasn't until Susan Atkins began talking that the truth unraveled. The 1970 trial was a media circus. Manson carved an X into his forehead. The women, brainwashed and loyal, mimicked him, sang in court, and showed no remorse. Charles Manson was sentenced to life in prison. So were his most loyal followers. But the horrors of their crimes and the twisted charisma that led them there still haunt American history. The Manson family wasn't just a cult. It was a mirror to a dark undercurrent in the American psyche, a reminder that even in an era of peace and love, darkness can arise. Colorado. The Watts family murders were a tragic and shocking crime that occurred in Frederick, Colorado in August 2018. The case drew national and international attention due to the seemingly picture-perfect image of the family and horrifying nature of the crime. Christopher Watts, commonly known as Chris Watts, was married to Shannon Watts. They had 2 young daughters, Bella, 4, and Celeste, 3. Shannon was also 15 weeks pregnant with a baby boy, whom they had planned to name Nico. From the outside, the Watts family appeared happy, with Shannon frequently posting smiling family photos and positive messages on social media. On August 13, 2018, Shannon was reported missing by a friend who had dropped her off early that morning after a work trip and couldn't reach her later in the day. When police conducted a wellness check, they found the home empty and no sign of Shannon or the girls, though Shannon's car and personal belongings were still there. Chris initially told police he had no idea where his wife and daughters were, and gave a series of television interviews pleading for their return. However, inconsistencies in his story, combined with evidence from Shannon's phone, neighbors' security footage, and his own behavior, quickly raised suspicion. After failing a polygraph test on August 15th, Chris eventually confessed to murdering his wife. Initially, he claimed that he had killed Shannon in a fit of rage after she supposedly strangled their daughters, a claim that was proven false. He ultimately admitted to killing Shannon himself after telling her he wanted a separation. He then smothered both of his daughters and transported all three bodies to an oil work site owned by his employer. He buried Shannon in a shallow grave and disposed of the girls' bodies in oil tanks. Investigators discovered that Chris was having an affair with a coworker, and he reportedly wanted to start a new life with her. The affair and his desire to escape his responsibilities were considered the primary motives behind the murder. Chris Watts was arrested on August 15th and later pled guilty to multiple counts of first-degree murder to avoid the death penalty, as requested by Shannon's family. On November 19th, 2018, he was sentenced to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus an additional 84 years for unlawful termination of a pregnancy and tampering with a dead body. The case has been the subject of numerous documentaries, interviews, and true crime analysis, including the Netflix documentary American Murder: The Family Next Door, which used archival footage, social media posts, and law enforcement recordings to tell the story. The Watts family murders left a deep impact on the community and continue to be one of the most disturbing examples of family annihilation in recent history. Connecticut. The Hartford distributor shooting is a tragic workplace mass shooting that occurred on August 3, 2010, in Manchester, Connecticut. Omar Thornton, a 34-year-old truck driver for Hartford Distributors, arrived at work that morning to attend a disciplinary meeting. During the meeting, he was confronted with evidence that he had been caught on video stealing beer from the company. Thornton was given the option to resign or be fired, and he chose to resign. He then signed a resignation letter, but instead of leaving, he pulled out a handgun and opened fire. Thornton moved through the facility, targeting co-workers. He killed 8 people and injured 2 others before eventually turning the gun on himself. He died at the scene from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Before and during the attack, Thornton reportedly told people that he was the victim of racial discrimination at work. After his death, his family also claimed he had complained about racism on the job, but investigations by authorities and the company found no formal complaints on record. The shooting stunned the local community and brought attention to issues like workplace violence, mental health, gun access, and allegations of systemic racism in the workplace. It was one of the deadliest workplace shootings in Connecticut history. Delaware. On February 1st, 2017, a major uprising occurred at James T. Vaughn Correctional Center in Smyrna, Delaware, the state's largest and most secure prison. The incident involved a hostage situation, during which several inmates took over Building C, a section of the prison housing maximum security inmates. The standoff lasted nearly 18 hours. Inmates took 4 correctional staff members hostage. They demanded prison reform, better conditions, and educational opportunities. One of the hostages was Lieutenant Stephen Floyd, a 16-year veteran of the Delaware Department of Correction. During the standoff, Lieutenant Floyd was brutally beaten and killed. His body was later recovered after law enforcement retook the building. He was praised as a hero for reportedly warning other officers of the danger, potentially saving lives. Floyd was posthumously promoted and honored for his bravery. 18 inmates were eventually charged in connection with the uprising and murder. Charges included murder, riot, assault, and kidnapping. The legal proceedings were complicated, with multiple trials and mixed verdicts. One inmate was acquitted of Floyd's murder but convicted of other charges. The state eventually dropped the remaining charges against several defendants after difficulties securing convictions. The uprising brought national attention to prison conditions in Delaware. A state investigation revealed systemic issues, staff shortages, mandatory overtime, and poor communication between prison leadership and correctional officers. The event spurred calls for reform in Delaware's correctional system and changes how to prison staff are trained and supported. Florida. In the early hours of January 15, 1978, serial killer Ted Bundy committed one of his most brutal and shocking attacks at the Chi Omega sorority house on the campus of Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida. By this time, Bundy had already escaped from custody, not once, but twice, while awaiting trial in Colorado. After his second escape in December 1977, he made his way across the country to Florida under a series of stolen identities. Just after 3 a.m., Bundy broke into the Chi Omega house through a rear door that had a broken lock. What followed was a spree of unimaginable violence. Margaret Bowman, 21, was attacked first. Bundy bludgeoned her with a piece of oak firewood and then garroted her with a nylon stocking. Lisa Levy, 20, was beaten unconscious, strangled, and assaulted. Her injuries were horrific, including bite marks that would later be used as key evidence in court. Bundy didn't stop there. He continued through the sorority house, attacking 2 more women. Karen Chandler and Kathy Kleiner were both severely beaten in their rooms but miraculously survived. All of this happened in less than 15 minutes, and remarkably, other women in the house slept through the entire attack, a testament to how silent and swift Bundy was. Bundy left the Chi Omega house and within an hour attacked another woman, Cheryl Thomas, a dance student who lived in a nearby apartment. She also survived but suffered permanent hearing loss and facial injuries. The brutal nature of these crimes and the fact that they occurred in a college sorority house, a place associated with friendship and safety, stunned the nation. It shattered any lingering doubts about Bundy's capacity for extreme violence. Bundy was eventually caught in February 1978 in Pensacola, Florida. The bite marks on Lisa Levy's body became crucial forensic evidence. He was convicted for the Chi Omega murders in 1980 and sentenced to death. He was ultimately executed in 1989 at Florida State Prison. Thank you for watching Part 1 of the 50 States of True Crime. If you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing and hit the like button. Turn on notifications so you'll know every time we upload new content. If you are inclined, please leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you. Until next time, stay curious.